Hello, I'm Niri. I run this account and this shop, and recently I decided to make a YouTube channel where I would answer some of your guys' questions, since sometimes just answering them on my stories isn't very helpful. So I put out some posts asking for questions for this video, so here I'll be answering them. This will mostly be questions that I can answer based off talking rather than drawing examples, though I'll also try to show some of those too. Please forgive my really bad editing skills. So the first question is, how long does it usually take to finish a piece? I usually average around 3 to 5 hours per fully rendered painting. I've been told that I generally render pretty fast, but my doodles are a lot quicker to make though, since they're not clean. Like maybe an hour or less for a full page of doodles. I'd say I usually take an hour to an hour and a half sketching a painting, depending on how complex poses are. Half an hour to figure out color, and then the rest of the time is rendering. Do I usually draw after I let an idea marinate, or do I just draw whenever I feel like it? So actually I have a whole list of drawing ideas on my phone and on paper. It's really long. So usually when I'm ready to make a new drawing, I would scroll through my list and just pick one that I'm like, oh, I really want to draw that right now. But a lot of time I use really vague words on my list like spoon or sunset, and then I forget what it means, so I lose that drawing idea. And sometimes when a new card comes out for Project Sekai, I'm like, oh my god, I have to draw that right now. But usually I just pick from my list. What brush do I use? Actually, I use a custom brush that I made for myself for sketches and coloring. I really like it. I do also use some default brushes as well because I'm basic. This brush here, the custom one that I mentioned before, is the one that I use the most. You see it everywhere in my drawings because it's what I use to sketch. I started using this one a lot more recently because I was on the hunt for a good brush for my merch, and as you can see by the name, I spent a very long time making it and tweaking with the settings. This brush is a default and I use it to blend, but sometimes I use other brushes. This one I use for texture and for large blocks of color. Do I prefer chibi drawings or full body drawings? What do you think? Chibi is definitely easier, but because it's so simple, sometimes it's hard to make it look good because a lot of times I overcomplicate or I don't make them cute enough, you know? Full body is fun too. How do you color/use colors? I don't know. I kind of just go with it. Mostly, how I figure out colors is from observation from real life and other people's art. You may notice that I use a lot of blues in my shadows. This is what I picked up from observing shadows outside, because the sky is blue and the sun creates warm light. Therefore, the absence of the sun would make this sky reflect some of its colors and the shadows, right? I don't know. Other than that, it's kind of hard to say how I really use colors. You have to ask more specifically, and it's kind of a bit of a longer process. I might make a paint with me video where I go in depth with color use in the future if you guys are interested in that. So I'll just be painting and you just watch me paint. I don't know. What canvas size do I use? So a lot of professional artists will use bigger canvas sizes so that the quality is better when you export it, since it'll be put into media and stuff. But for me, I use actually a pretty small canvas, which is really unprofessional. So I don't really recommend that you do that. I do it to save storage and also because I don't really care about the quality that much, since I think it looks fine. I usually use a size relative to 2048 pixels or 2048 pixels. Why 2048? I don't even know. I've just been using that for as long as I can remember. Professional artists will use 3000 to 4000 pixels. How do I make lighting and shadows look more realistic? First of all, thank you for saying that my lighting and shadows looks realistic. Layer modes. I use them so much. You probably heard of more common ones like multiply, add, and color dodge. I do a combination of using layer modes and picking out colors for lighting, meaning that I use the color wheel and then I eyeball the right color. This is especially if I already used a blend mode and then I need to add more colors for a design on the clothes or something. Oh yeah, also a little disclaimer, I actually merge all of my layers and paint on one layer because I'm weird. So a lot of my tips will revolve around that. So if you're a line artist, I'm not sure if listening to me is the best idea because some processes are different because I paint on one layer. Like some of my friends use dozens of layers and I just use one. It's not exactly easier because like if I accidentally merge too early or merge and then I find out later I didn't want to merge a specific layer, it's too late and then I have to deal with it and then like color over it, and it's like really annoying because I don't have a line art layer. But I'll probably talk about this more in a different video. Back to lighting and shadows, it's really just something you need to observe and study on your own to get right. Like I can make a video explaining certain lighting scenarios, how to make it look somewhat realistic too. But for now, I'll just say like if you want your piece to have a blue vibe, use a blue color on like multiply or overlay before you render the rest of your piece. Usually I start with basic base colors and then use blend modes to achieve this certain mood I want. I recommend checking out this video that I found that explains how to color certain lighting scenarios while waiting for me to make one for myself. Another thing I find useful about painting on one layer is like using curves or color balance and stuff like that. Like I can use curves to adjust my colors if needed, and it's more convenient to have everything on one layer because I don't have to adjust every single layer. I just have to adjust the one layer that I'm painting on. But it's also like a lot of work if I only want to adjust a certain part of my piece because now everything gets adjusted because it's on one layer. I adjust my colors a lot even after I finish a piece until I get the colors that I find the most fitting for it. Recently, I've also discovered gradient maps, and I'm not sure if using them actually helps me or not, but like I'll use it, I don't know. Since I do merge all of my layers, unfortunately I can't show how it affected previous pieces because my layers are merged. So I don't have the gradient map layer on top of it. But in the Paint With Me video, I can show you how it affects it. How do I do composition? So I've seen a lot of people talk about like the golden ratio, which is the spinny thing that comes out of a certain point. I don't actually use it myself, but I think it's a lot of good artists use it, so I recommend it. I don't know. Never actually used it. Maybe I should. After I began liking Party Sekai, I actually use a lot of the cards for inspiration in terms of like color, background, and composition, because like Party Sekai artists, like what are they feeding them? Like they're so, all the cards are so good. Anyway, it works, so I'm not really complaining. I usually like tilt my pieces a little instead of keeping them straight on, or I'd like put it in a strange angle. But if you rotate it, then like it actually looks normal. I really love perspective too, so I do that sometimes. Straight on pieces can look really cool and stand out too though, so you don't have to like tilt everything or put everything in perspective. You can make a really amazing piece, just have it straight on. I really enjoy studies like background studies where I don't exactly have to focus on like characters, and I can just have fun experimenting with backgrounds and learning how to make them more realistic. As I said before, I take a lot of inspiration from like real life and other art. So like I take pictures of my environment when the sky is really pretty, even though I actually don't use it as reference when I draw, so I think I'm just wasting storage in my camera roll, but it's fun, I guess. Do I use references, or how do I use references? Yes, I use references. Please use them. They literally change your life if you use them. It's definitely very hard to start a piece just from your imagination, so I use references to help me with coming up with environments and moods and poses and stuff like that. Like this piece here, when I first had my idea for it, I just thought like grassy field, daytime, yellow lighting, really joyful and everything. So then I went on Pinterest and I found some references for the background. Please note that I did not copy the reference, I just used it to get an idea for how I wanted to do lighting and backgrounds. After I had something physical to look at and be like, oh, so that's how this would look if this environment was real, I started to paint the colors in. In terms of which to do first, the background or the characters, I know a lot of people who do the background first and then the characters, because after you do all the environment stuff, you can light your characters properly. Personally, I kind of just do whatever. Like sometimes I do the characters first and then the background, but sometimes I do the background first. I don't know. Sometimes I just block out the colors for the background and then render the characters and then clean up the background after. I don't really have a specific process for this, so don't really listen to me on that. I also recommend using references for other stuff like anatomy and shading clothes, since that's also hard to do just from your imagination. Like, we have this stuff in real life, so we should use it to our advantage instead of thinking like, oh, this is where the shadow would go on the sleeve, because like, yeah, even though like logically there wouldn't be a shadow there. I use pose references when I want to draw characters in really complicated poses or in perspective. Most of the time I just kind of wing rendering clothes and poses though. I know I should use references, but I'm always like, I can do this myself. Or like, I can't find a good reference for how I want to draw something, so I just have to go based on my imagination. How did I learn anatomy? I didn't. I mean, if you look at some of my drawings, a lot of the time the anatomy is incorrect because I didn't use references. I just drew from my head. I mean, overall, I guess the anatomy is fine. Like high proportion torso and legs and stuff. That's just from observation from like human life and stuff. Yeah, I just kind of look at people and like, yeah. Also, it's helpful if you have like a really tall mirror, because then you can use yourself as a reference when you want to be like, oh, how tall should I make their legs, or like how like big are the shoulders or something. I don't know. This is like the basic structure that I have for humans. It's probably a little wrong, but this is just what I got from my own observation. Some key points are that the hands go down until about like halfway through the thigh. And yeah, if you ever seen a figure drawing, that's kind of how I do my sketches, but like in a very minimal way. Like, I barely make other forms other than the head. Yeah, I don't know why I do that. I just get like the general shape that the body makes before I start my cleaner sketch, and then I delete the figure drawing layer because I hate crowding up my canvas. What's my drawing process like? So I start with an idea and then I do the figure sketch that I mentioned previously, and then once that's to my liking, I start the basic sketch, then flat colors, then lighting, and then I render, and then like finishing touches and stuff. Thank you guys for watching this. It was fun to make, but also difficult since I don't really know what to talk about. I'm afraid I didn't answer your guys' question properly or thoroughly, but I promise I'll make more videos that are specific for certain questions. So if you have any more questions, feel free to comment. I might make a part 2 if this is slightly better than I thought it would. Bye bye. Sorry if I talk too fast. I don't know what I'm doing.